Deshaun Watson was called the Michael Jordan of football. He looked like the next great NFL quarterback after just his rookie season. But then he lost it all. After a criminal investigation and over 20 civil lawsuits, Watson went from one of the best quarterbacks in the league to possibly the very worst. Back in 2015, Deshaun Watson first caught the attention of NFL scouts. It was his sophomore year at Clemson, and he was coming back from an ACL tear. That season, he led the Tigers to a 12-0 regular season record and a #1 ranking in the AP poll. For his outstanding play, he was named a Heisman finalist and came in third place for the award. Clemson made it all the way to the national championship game that year, but they ultimately lost versus #2 Alabama. Despite the loss, Deshaun showed the world he was a star in the making. Versus Alabama's defense that was considered the best in the country, Watson had 478 total yards, which broke the record for the most ever in a national championship game. So expectations were high for Deshaun heading into his junior year. Many felt if he played like he did the previous season, he would be the first quarterback off the board come draft day. Well, Watson ended up playing even better than his sophomore year that season. He passed for over 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns. Yet again, he was named a Heisman finalist, but came in second for the award behind Lamar Jackson. After crushing Ohio State 31-0 in the college football playoff semifinal, Clemson was headed back to the national championship game. And their opponent, you guessed it, was Alabama yet again. By the second quarter, the Tigers found themselves down 14-0. Deshaun Watson then stepped up and led a handful of scoring drives. But with just over 2 minutes remaining, Bama got into the end zone to take a 3-point lead. So with 2 minutes and 1 second left, Deshaun Watson and the Clemson offense trotted onto the field. Watson made clutch throw after clutch throw and got the Tigers down to the Crimson Tide's 9-yard line with just 14 seconds left. Then, with 3 seconds remaining, he hit Hunter Renfrow for the game-winning touchdown. Deshaun Watson couldn't have played much better in that game. He had 420 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns, and of course, an insanely clutch game-winning drive. It seemed like he was a lock to be the first quarterback drafted come April. Until he wasn't. UNC's Mitch Trubisky started to generate buzz as the class's possible QB1, and Texas Tech's Patrick Mahomes was rising up many's draft board. Questions started to arise about Watson during the pre-draft process. Some scouts thought he lacked arm talent. He wasn't always very accurate with his throws, and his arm was on the weaker side. They also believed Watson had pretty poor vision, which resulted in trouble working through his progressions. And finally, some scouts felt he had no pocket presence. He was a very confusing prospect because in college, he got results and was a winner, but some questioned if his style of play would translate to the NFL. When draft day arrived, Mitch Trubisky was selected 2nd overall by the Bears, and Patrick Mahomes was taken 10th overall by the Chiefs. So out of the top 3 quarterback prospects in the draft, Watson was the only one left in the green room. But then, the Texans traded up for the Browns' 12th overall pick, and with the selection, they drafted Deshaun Watson. Watson entered his rookie season as veteran Tom Savage's backup, but that didn't last long. During the first game of the season, Houston found themselves down 19-0 at halftime. Savage was then benched and Watson was put into the game. Heading into week 2, Deshaun was named the team's new starting QB. And in his first ever NFL start, he led the Texans to a win. 2 weeks later, in week 4, he scored 5 total touchdowns, which tied the NFL rookie record for the most in a single game. After this performance, he was named not just the AFC Rookie, but the AFC Player of the Week. In the very next game, Deshaun yet again scored 5 total touchdowns. He was on an absolute tear. There was now a ton of hype surrounding him, and he was looking like a lock to win the Rookie of the Year award. The Texans were 3-3 heading into a huge Week 8 matchup versus the Seahawks. Watson played absolutely out of his mind in this game. He was making all the throws. It was highlight after highlight. He had over 400 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 67 rushing yards. The Texans ultimately lost after Seattle scored a last-second game-winning touchdown, but Watson shattered yet another record during this game. His 4th touchdown pass in this one was his 16th for the month of October, which broke the record for the most passing touchdowns by a rookie in a calendar month. After that game, Watson was named the AFC Rookie and the AFC Player of the Month. Deshaun was looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but then it all came crashing down. 4 days after the game versus Seattle, Watson suffered a non-contact injury in practice. Testing soon revealed that the rookie had torn his ACL, which abruptly ended his record-breaking season. The following season, Watson looked like the quarterback we saw before the season-ending injury. After starting the year 0-3, Deshaun led the Texans on a 9-game win streak. The team finished the regular season with an 11-5 record, which won them the AFC South. So Deshaun was set to make his first playoff start against the last seed Indianapolis Colts. In that one, Watson was under heavy duress. He was sacked 3 times and hit an additional 8. He finished the game by completing just 59% of his passes for 235 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. The Texans lost 21-7, which ended their season. Watson finished his first full season in the league by completing 68% of his passes for 4,100 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. On the ground, he ran for an additional 500 yards and 5 scores. After putting up these impressive numbers, he was named to his first Pro Bowl. In 2019, Watson led Houston to the AFC South title for the 2nd year in a row. In the wildcard round, the 4-seed Texans were slated to host the 5-seed Bills. Just like the previous year, Deshaun was under heavy duress. In the 3rd quarter, Houston found themselves down 16-0. After a handful of scoring drives led by Watson, the game was knotted at 19 with no time left in regulation. So to OT they went. The Bills got the ball first, but didn't score, so when the Texans got the ball back, all they needed was a field goal to win. Deshaun then avoided 2 sacks at once and completed the pass that set up the game-winning field goal. The Texans were now headed to Kansas City to take on the 2-seed Chiefs in the divisional round. Houston started the game with a bang and was up a whopping 24-0 in the 2nd quarter. But then Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs came to life and were up 28-24 at halftime. Things fell all the way apart for the Texans in the 2nd half. It was a mess. The defense couldn't get a stop, Deshaun was missing throws, and the team only scored 7 points. The Chiefs went on to win 51-31. This loss marked the beginning of the end for a Texans team that had so much promise. That offseason, Houston traded star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals for a 2nd-round pick and running back David Johnson. This was a move that shocked everyone. How could the Texans trade one of their best players and get so little in return? It made 0 sense. However, the team made sure their franchise quarterback wouldn't be going anywhere. They gave Watson a 4-year, $177.5 million deal, which was the 2nd biggest in NFL history at the time. But the 2020 season didn't get off to a good start for Watson or the Texans. The team started the year 0-4, which resulted in head coach / GM Bill O'Brien being fired. Ultimately, the Texans ended the year with a pitiful 4-12 record. But somehow, during this disaster, Watson put together statistically the best season of his career. He completed 70% of his passes for 4,800 yards, which was the most in the league, by the way, 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. However, after the season ended, Deshaun Watson requested a trade. Guys, I want to take a quick second to thank some people that have really helped the channel get where it is today, and that is the folks at Underdog. Underdog was one of the very first sponsors on this channel, and I'm super excited to announce I'm going to be partnering with them again for this NFL season. If you guys sign up using my promo code SheGotSports, you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. You guys know I already love playing pick'em on there. It's super simple. You just gotta pick higher or lower, but their fantasy drafts are super underrated because you can do drafts for a single game in a single week or just Sunday in any specific week, like week 3. And since I've had so much fun playing fantasy football against you guys on Underdog in the past, I'm going to make a private draft for this Sunday, week 3. It's first come, first serve. When it fills up, the draft will start. So I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to play head-to-head with me and a few other subscribers. The quarterback was upset with the direction of the franchise and wanted out. Why? Well, a few things happened throughout the year that disgruntled Watson. First, he was annoyed that the team traded away his #1 wide receiver. Then he was upset that the team didn't initially request to interview Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy for their head coaching vacancy. And finally, he was angry that the team's owner, Cal McNair, didn't listen to his opinions when hiring new GM Nick Caserio. Despite the QB formally requesting a trade, the Texans refused to negotiate a possible trade trade with other teams. They weren't open to letting their franchise quarterback leave. But then, just a few weeks later, news broke that no one could have expected. On March 16th, 2021, a civil lawsuit was filed by a Houston massage therapist that alleged Watson sexually assaulted her during a session in 2020. After the news broke, Watson made this statement. As a result of a social media post by a publicity-seeking plaintiff's lawyer, I recently became aware of a lawsuit that has apparently been filed against me. I have not yet seen the complaint, but I know this: I have never treated any woman with anything other than the utmost respect. The plaintiff's lawyer claims that this isn't about money, but before filing suit, he made a baseless six-figure settlement demand, which I quickly rejected. Unlike him, this isn't about money for me. It's about clearing my name, and I look forward to doing that. However, over the next few weeks, over 20 additional women came forward and filed lawsuits against Watson for sexual misconduct. As the lawsuits by these massage therapists stacked up, Deshaun said he only hired about 40 different therapists during his 5 seasons in Houston. But a report surfaced that from fall 2019 to spring 2021, just a 17-month span, Watson hired 66 different therapists. So here's what Watson was doing. He was going around messaging less experienced and smaller massage therapists and scheduling an appointment with them. What's even crazier is when booking these appointments, Watson made it seem like he was doing them a favor. Like this Instagram DM here, when he was trying to find a time to schedule with this therapist, he said, "Just trying to support Black businesses." Also, Watson didn't always use licensed massage therapists. He reached out to personal trainers and estheticians for massages. When they told him they didn't specialize in massages, he said, "No, that's fine, I still want you to do it anyway." This is what happened when he was questioned specifically about that during his deposition. Question: did you even ask her what her experience level was? Deshaun: no sir, that wasn't a priority. Question: right, you didn't care, did you? Deshaun: that wasn't a priority, I just wanted a massage. Question: you didn't care what her skill level was, correct? Deshaun: that wasn't a priority. Question: you didn't care whether she was properly trained? Deshaun: that wasn't my priority, sir. Like what? You are an athlete. Your body being healthy and your body being able to perform at its peak is what allows you to make millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Why wouldn't you care that the person massaging your muscles knows how to do it or not? Like, I feel like that would be a huge priority. I'm not gonna really dive into what Watson was doing during these appointments because, I want to keep it appropriate. But let's just say he was trying to force women to do things they didn't want to do. There's a ton of articles out there. If you want to see exactly what was going on, you could look it up and you can find a ton of information on it. After one session, Deshaun said to a therapist, quote, "I know you have a career and reputation, and I know you would hate for someone to mess with yours, just like I don't want someone messing with mine." In late 2020, a different massage therapist posted screenshots of messages and a Cash App receipt from Watson and wrote the caption, quote, "I could really expose you." Deshaun told the Texans head of security about this Instagram post, and as a result, he gave Watson NDAs. I'm not saying the Texans gave him these NDAs because they knew what was going on and were trying to help him cover it up. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just noting it. And a lot of celebrities use NDAs for everyday things. It's a common thing if you're a big celebrity to have people sign NDAs. Also, during his deposition, Watson testified under oath that Ashley Solis, the first woman to come forward, was teary-eyed at the end of the session, but that he didn't know why. He said, quote, "I don't know. Like I told you at the beginning of this depo, I'm still trying to figure out why we in the situation we are in right now. Why I'm talking to you guys. Why you guys are interviewing me. I don't know. Do not know." A criminal investigation was then started by the Houston Police Department. Throughout this controversy, Watson insisted that he still wanted to be traded, but no one even knew if he would be allowed to play during the upcoming season. So that April, with their 3rd round pick, the Texans drafted quarterback Davis Mills. This signaled to a lot of people that the Texans didn't feel Watson would be playing for them in 2021. And this turned out to be true. Deshaun was ruled out for every game Houston played that season for, quote, non-injury reasons/personal matter. But this didn't stop teams from wanting to trade for him. The Miami Dolphins were rumored to have strong interest in trading for the QB before the trade deadline that November. Ultimately, a deal didn't get done, and Deshaun stayed a Texan for the remainder of the season. Fast forward to March 2022, a grand jury declined to indict Watson on criminal charges. Even though he still faced 22 civil lawsuits, more teams became interested in trading for him since he was cleared of the criminal charges. The Falcons, Panthers, Saints, and Browns all submitted trade offers to the Texans for Watson, but the thing is, Houston didn't really control where he went. Watson's contract had a no-trade clause, so out of the teams that submitted a trade offer for him, he could pick which one he wanted to go to. In the end, he opted to go with the Cleveland Browns since they offered him a 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed contract, which was the most guaranteed money ever given to a player in NFL history. Cleveland also made a sneaky move to lure the QB to them. They structured the deal so Watson got the least amount of money he possibly could during the first year of his contract, then backloaded all the other money to the remaining 4 years of the deal. Why did they do this? Well, they knew Watson getting suspended was a real possibility, and when a player's suspended, they don't get paid their game checks. So to ensure Deshaun lost the least amount of money possible during his suspension, they made his game checks for that year as small as they could. Since Watson was a free agent, a trade still had to be executed. So on top of all that guaranteed money, the Browns sent 3 first-round picks and multiple mid-round picks to the Texans. Some Browns fans were super happy about the trade. Others were upset by it, not just because of the allegations against Watson, but also because of how much they had to give up to land him. Baker Mayfield, the former #1 overall pick, had been the Browns quarterback for the past few seasons. He loved Cleveland and led the team to their first playoff win in ages. He was someone who really helped turn the franchise around. But at this point, Watson was a better QB than Mayfield. So after the team signed Deshaun, they traded Baker to the Panthers. During Watson's Cleveland introductory press conference, the media asked a ton of questions about the allegations. Browns GM Andrew Berry just kept saying that we did our own research and we feel good about Deshaun as a person, but admitted the team didn't reach out to the 22 women who made the accusations because the team's attorneys advised them not to do so. During this same press conference, Watson still insisted that he didn't do anything wrong.
I don't have any regrets. Like I said before, the things that are off the field right now that came up, caught me by surprise because I never did anything that these people are alleging.
Over the summer, news broke that Watson would be suspended for the first 6 games of the regular season. However, the NFL chose to appeal this suspension. You see, former judge Sue Lewis Robinson was tasked with figuring out how long Watson should be suspended. She felt 6 games was appropriate considering how long the league had suspended other players for similar acts. But the NFL wanted him suspended for more than 6 games. Roger Goodell wanted him out the whole season. Eventually, on August 18th, it was agreed upon by the NFL and the NFLPA that Watson would be suspended for the first 11 games of the 2022 season. After the suspension and settlement was made public, Watson said this.
I'm moving on with my career, with my life, and I'm continuing to stand on my innocence. Just because, settlements and things like that happen doesn't mean that a person is guilty for anything. I feel like the person has the opportunity to stand on his innocence.
On November 28th, Deshaun Watson's suspension ended, and he was set to play his first game of the season in Week 13 versus none other than the Houston Texans. It was going to be the first NFL game he played in exactly 700 days. During that game, Watson definitely looked like he hadn't stepped on the field in nearly 2 full years. He threw for just 131 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and had the worst passer rating of his entire career. In the 6 games Deshaun started for the Browns in 2022, he went 3-3, completed 58% of his passes for 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Watson definitely didn't look like the QB the Browns traded for in 2022. But fans didn't freak out. They just figured he was rusty after not having played in so long. Entering 2023, the expectation was Deshaun would look like his old self again and Cleveland would make a playoff run. However, the first 2 weeks of the season were rough for the QB. In those 2 games, he completed just 55% of his passes for 389 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He had a bounce back performance in Week 3, But then everything went downhill. The week following that game, Deshaun was limited in practice with a shoulder contusion. Despite this, the QB told Cleveland.com that he expected to play in the team's upcoming game versus the Ravens. However, when game day arrived, Watson was ruled out with his shoulder injury. After the game, head coach Kevin Stefanski said Watson had hoped to play, but ultimately didn't feel comfortable doing so. Deshaun missed the team's next 2 games, but was set to start in week 7. However, during that one, Watson aggravated his shoulder injury and was ruled out before the first half ended. He returned 2 weeks later and played in 2 games, but then fractured the bone in his throwing shoulder during a week 10 win versus the Ravens. The fracture required surgery, which ended his season. So that brings us to this 2024 season. People felt Watson would be okay, a serviceable quarterback in 2024. No one was expecting him to be 2019-2020 Watson, but they thought he could be a solid game manager under center. Well, after week 1, it doesn't seem like this is the case. Watson looked like legitimately one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, right there with Daniel Jones and Bryce Young. In the third quarter of the Browns' week 1 game versus the Cowboys, 22 of Cleveland's 44 offensive plays had gone for 0 or negative yards. So how did Watson go from looking like this to this? Well, I think it's a combination of things. One, the lawsuits and allegations definitely took a toll on him. He went from being seen as a hero to a villain. He was away from his teams for nearly 2 full seasons. He probably was and might still be an outcast. I have no idea what it's like inside the Browns locker room, but I'm curious to know what his teammates really think of him. Is he a guy they would want to be friends with outside of the facility, or do they just view him as a peer that they work with? I want to know what they really think. I'm not insinuating they don't like him, I'm just curious to know what they really think of him. 2. In Houston, the offense ran a ton of run-pass option plays and play action. It involved a ton of misdirection and getting Watson out of the pocket. Remember when he was coming out of college, scouts said he had poor pocket presence? Well, I think we're seeing that now in Cleveland. He's taken a lot of sacks. Yes, in part because the O-line was bad week 1, but also because he's not moving around as much. It looks like he lost a ton of his athleticism, and that's what allowed him to have so much success earlier in his career. In the past, opposing defenses were worried about him both running and throwing the ball. They had to play honest and couldn't sell out to stop one. Now, teams don't really fear Watson as a runner. 3. His arm. Some people said he had a noodle arm coming out of college, and while I think that's an exaggeration, he didn't have the strongest arm. He didn't throw the ball with an insane amount of velocity. Coming off this shoulder surgery, his arm looks weak. It just looks straight up bad. It seemed like everything that once made him great has just vanished. On top of his extremely poor play, another woman has come forward in September 2024 and filed a suit against Watson for alleged sexual assault from an incident in 2020. To make matters even worse for Cleveland, the quarterback they traded away when they signed Watson, Baker Mayfield, has been balling out. He led the Buccaneers all the way to the divisional round of the playoffs in 2023. And oh yeah, he cost a lot less money and a lot less picks than Deshaun Watson. If you want a continuation of this video, check out this one I did here on Baker Mayfield and what happened to him after he was traded from Cleveland and how he's better than Deshaun Watson right now.